need to make a brace for the strut towers, so I already fabricated some cups that I can bring some 1-inch tube down to weld to and span across. I just took a piece of wire and just kind of bent it in an arc just to see if I like it, and I don't. You know, it makes this angle pretty steep here, and the problem is this one is higher, and this one here will be shorter than the one in the back, so there'll have to be different arcs, radius, or if they're the same, then one of them is going to have to, like the back one would have to have like a straight leg, extra length, because to keep them both parallel all the way across. So I mean, it's a challenge, but it actually gives you some, you know, little creativity to do something different. I don't know, because I was thinking I'd like to have you know, fill the distance between the two tubes with, you know, some thin sheet metal, but I can do dimple dies, holes across. So that might be kind of cool looking. But then I was thinking, well, I could run it straight across and then drop down, and then they'd be parallel up here across the top. So because I got the tubing roller now, I'll do 1 inch, and I got this, I forgot I even had this, so I can do bends at the ends to make everything line up. But I think what I'm going to do is just like do a full-size sketch on a piece of paper, you know, locate the distances between the two mounts and sketch it out, and then I'll have an actual template that I can bend the tubing to, and then see if I like how it looks or not. So it's kind of fun, something different. Made a rough outline of how I want the tube, I think, to look. So I laid out both of the fittings that are already on the strut tower. This one's closer and it's higher. This one's further back and lower. So this tube, to keep these two parallel, is going to have to come down further and then be longer. But this way here I can lay the tube out. So I'll roll this with the roller and then bend this with the tubing bender. It's not that much of a bend, so I think I can just put it in that, and I might be able to just tweak it. So give it a try. Well, I tried bending a piece of the tube on the tubing roller. That worked out great, but the short bends on the ends kinked up a little bit. I think the tubing is just too thin to make that tight a bend. I've used this bender before with 1/2 inch regular water pipe, and it worked great. I even tried putting, you know, filling the tube with sand, and it's still just like kind of kinked up. I don't know that I really like it anyway. I don't know, something about it. I mean, yeah, I can make another one that comes here and then goes, arcs across. But I'm almost thinking I'd almost rather do a fabricated metal one out of flat stock, and then I can make it, you know, all this. I won't use these, but you know, just make a box to go across, and then I can just fabricate it out of flat stock, and then I can do, you know, be some more design on it. I don't know, just something about this I don't like. Let's try something else. I got the brace mocked up. Much happier with how it looks. I think the curved tube it came out nice, I think, but I didn't like it. So I think this is much nicer, a little cleaner, and I think I'll plate it all the way across with dimple dies. You know, I think that'll look pretty cool. So pretty happy with how this is coming out. Got the suspension parts disassembled from the subframe. So now I cut all these washers for the different size bolts that go on the suspension. So what I can do is put a washer in there and then a spacer, and then use that as my locator negative jig part, and then tie that up to the frame, and then I can remove the subframe and build cross members with tabs for all the suspension mounting points. So I mean, the cutting on the plasma cutter, I mean, this would have taken me a day, and it took me maybe an hour. So huge help with the arc droid. So it's working out pretty good. I also got these suspension joints, and what I'll do with these is these are going to be the mounts for the rear end. So what I was going to do is run a piece of 2x6 or 2x4 across, depending on how it works out, and then these are actually 2 inches wide, the metal part, so those will be countersunk in the cross member and then lined up with the rear end center section and bolt right onto that. So I think that might work pretty good. So I found that a piece of 1/2 inch regular steel pipe, you know, like water pipe, fit inside some 1 inch tubing I got. I think it's 082 wall, and I just bought some for bracing, you know, miscellaneous use. It's not structural. So that actually fits inside that square tube perfectly, and that way I can put the bolt in, and then these two pieces will slide back and forth and just take up the slack, hit it with some tack welds, and now I've got a spacer, because if I put the washers in there and then try to cut a piece just perfectly to fit in there, yeah, you could do it, but you may have to tweak it and grind it or whatever. And I don't know, this just seemed like a pretty slick way to do it. Now I have a nice flat spot to put a brace from here up to the frame, and then I'll locate my control arm joint right there. Got this side of the rear suspension jigged up using the temporary sleeves I made up. And these bottom ones and then these upper ones actually have slots, so I was able to double up the bolts to take up the space. So I made washers with oval holes to match the oval holes in the brackets. And then so these jigs can come off. I made them so they'll slide off, because once this is all fitted up, you're never going to get the subframe out without cutting the subframe all up, which I guess I could do that, but if I don't have to, it's not really that big a deal to make it so I can remove them. And this way here I can remove the jig, drop the subframe, put the jig back. I got them all marked where they go, and then I double up the angle iron top and bottom so it keeps everything square and straight. And then I can put the jig pieces back on and then build the frame from there. So these three and then this one are done. So I gotta do the other side, and then I just gotta do something for the mount for the pumpkin. So I think it's coming out pretty cool. Got the passenger side jigged up. So now I think I'm going to disassemble these pieces and then make a jig piece for the pumpkin. You know, these are going to be in the way if I want to put angle here, but that's okay, because I'm probably going to do this piece first, these cross members, And then once that's kind of set in place, I can do tabs or drop downs for the rest of the suspension parts. So I think that'll work out okay. So I have the mounts for the center section tacked up, welded up. So that'll set the front and rear locations of the mounting bushings. So now I already unclamp these, so I can unbolt them, pull these off, and then the center section for the K-lumber should be free from my jig, other than these corner ones. I can't get those out, so but I think it'll slide straight down. So I can just cut the spot welds, tack welds I had put on to mount the subframe, and then that should be able to drop away. Now with the subframe out of the way, I can go back and start mounting the jig pieces, and then start building the cross members off of that. So I've got some bushings. Now these were 1/2 inch and they were just a little bit too small internal, but I was able to drill them out so they will fit the, I think it's a 12mm bolt. And then so that will get bolted on there, and then that'll set where my cross members got to go. So I don't know, it's going pretty good. I'm pretty happy with how it's coming out. In order to make that round edge, I had to draw a circle on the screen because there's no option for an arc. I think maybe in the updated software there is. So what I ended up doing was just starting it and letting it run. I already did a dry run to know what direction the circle was going to go for the large one, and then when it got around to the outside edge, I just shut it off manually right here. And that's, you know, it just saves a lot of time, and it gets that nice round edge for me, so it's a big help. Got the subframe braces fabricated. They're just bolted in to the jig, both front and rear. So now it's a matter of tying this one into the rails, and then I'm just going to run a brace across here because these have to be lower to make room for the pinion in the middle. So I think it's coming out pretty good. Got the cross members mocked up and tacked in, so now I can take the jig pieces off, and I want to set that pumpkin up in there and make sure that all my measurements work before I final weld everything. So hopefully it goes in right. Well, it fits. The bolts are a little tight, but they do go in. The only issue I have is I don't think I really have enough room for the washers I made, but I could probably put some thinner washers in there. You need something to go against and rub against the urethane. You don't want this gap here. You want a nice flat surface. So this, and then I don't know, I might still cut this apart and relax it a little bit so it fits a little better, and then run a brace from here straight across the top, and I'll frame those triangular pieces in. This one came out pretty good. I like this. Gonna trim the tops, but I think that'll work pretty nice. Got the front cross member roughed in. Pretty happy with how it looks, and I think that's going to work out pretty good. I think it's plenty strong enough. Now I just got to figure out how to run tabs down to these mounting locations here. I'm almost thinking maybe I could take a piece of that round tubing and kind of swing it down around, or maybe down through here or something. I'm not sure yet how I want to do it, but I mean, otherwise you're just basically making flat plate down and then just, you know, triangulating it and bossing it, put bosses and triangulated pieces on it. You know, I guess that will work too. So we'll see. I haven't decided yet, but I think this is a big milestone, just getting the rear pumpkin mounted, and you know, there's washers to butt up against the rubber bushings properly, and you know, it's just tacked in place, but it's got the weight on it. Everything's pretty square, and it's really pretty square. I mean, I'm very happy how it came out, so just got to keep going. So I think I'm going to try to use a piece of tubing for an inner brace, and I was able to cut this one kind of close just to mock it up, and this one I have no idea. I mean, that's just a crazy angle. I'm trying to figure out how to cut that, but you know, swoop down, and then I can pick up points to mount the braces, to mount the suspension parts off of this tube. So, and this piece of scrap is actually pretty darn good. I think I like how it kind of swoops down. So it's just a test to see if this will even work. Got the tubular subframe braces cut and tacked up, so that way there I can start building tabs to grab on the mounting points. making the miters is really difficult, but I think they're just going to have to do. And then I can start building more tabs. I'll do the back one and then move on to the front. Making pretty good progress. I got these two brackets in good shape. Brace here, it goes to the frame piece. Then I'm going to take and run from here over to the round tube. That's why I left this squared off. And then this piece I've got formed for both sides. It's a little tricky, lots of angles, but I like how it's coming out, so just keep going. So I'm not sure what happened, but something moved, and now I'm having a real difficult time getting these brackets to match up. I should be able to cut the same bracket from one side to the other and fit. So the only thing I can come up with is somehow this lower brace for this lower arm is not the same as this one. So none of the brackets aren't matching up side to side. So I don't know if it's the tube or it's the mock-up jig pieces I made. So I'm just going to cut them all out. I'm going to take the pumpkin out and completely redo how I did the jigs. I'll make a new jig, but I'm going to base it off of these holes and then come down and wrap around and locate this, because the pumpkin is in really good. I think it's plumb, it's square, straight, and that came up pretty good. So I'm going to just use these mounting points, and redo the jig and try it again, because something's off. I can't, there's so many angles, so many different, three-dimensional things going on. It's really hard to locate anything, so I'm just going to cut it out and redo it. Okay, attempt number 2, making a jig for the suspension points. I'm going to try it this way. My guess is I'm going to have to cut, one of these legs and then just do one, because I don't think the whole thing's going to come down. I just no way I'm going to be able to make it, but that's okay. I'll cut it, jig this one, then cut it, reattach that one back on here, and then I can remove just this half and then reset it down there. Well, it's getting pretty frustrating now. This side I got to mount. I redid the mounts a little bit with different jigs and it came out perfect. It went in no problem. This one I redid the mounts on the front a little bit, the back a little bit, and I had to cut this one off again right here. It's just, I don't know what the problem is. Now this one, the angle is completely wrong, so a little frustrating. Not sure what's off. I mean, I made a separate, this jig here. It's pretty simple. I formed it off of this. So I mean, the angles should be pretty freaking good. So I'm not sure what the problem is. I'm not giving up yet, but I spent probably, I don't know, over 4 hours this morning redoing it. And like I said, this one fit perfectly. Went in, no problem. Bolts went in, slid right in. The angles look really good. Ride height like this. It looks perfect. But that one, the measurements just don't make any sense. So cut it apart, try again. Finally got the lower control arm brackets figured out. This side wasn't too bad. Passenger side, I think I did over 3 times. Had to cut these brackets a bunch of times because if you just move it a quarter of an inch or something, then all the angles get screwed up and there's huge gaps. So so it took quite a bit, but now the arms go in and just like factory. So now it's just a matter of, there's a lower arm link down here, and then there's one that goes up there on each side. So if I can get it roughed in and just tacked up, make sure everything lines up, works, then I can continue on with final welding and cleaning up. This seems to be working out better. Just do one at a time and just redo the jig every time based off where the center section mounts. So that way there I know everything is square and lines up with the factory mounting holes. So it's a little extra work because you got to cut it apart and redo it every time you want to mount one. But so this one's done. The upper 4 are tacked in place, located, and they need a lot of cleanup. I'm going to redo some of the bracketry, how it attaches to the frame, but the locations are good. So then I just got to do this lower one over here and then these upper ones. But I'm thinking I'm just going to use the brackets I had already made because I mean that really can't move much once it's clamped in place. So no need to jig it off this bracketry here. So it's a little slow, a lot of extra work, but I think it's coming out pretty good. So all the tabs are in place, everything's tacked up, but I just put some quick washers on these upper mounts because it's all got to be cut kind of apart and boxed in, and so I'm going to do that with the frame upside down. So just put those on there so I can put the suspension on, roll it back underneath the body, put the body back down, verify body mount locations. I think I need another cross member in there maybe. Although back here is pretty stout, so we'll see what I gotta do, maybe just one. So I'm gonna put the suspension back on so I can roll it around and roll it up and put the body back down. I'll put the body back on the frame, set it all down. On the rear end, it's all assembled now. Just really tacked in real light because I want to make sure there's no issues. But yeah, everything seems to be in the right spot. I think it's a little low in the back because the shocks aren't adjusted properly, but that's okay. But the alignment looks pretty good. You know, nothing's crazy out of whack. So that support bar really made a big difference. And I haven't even finished it yet. I just kind of tacked in some pieces to hold it, you know, from going widthwise. I was going to put plating in the middle of it. So now I can take the body off, pull the suspensions out, pull the engine out, put the frame on a rotisserie, and final weld all the rear suspension because I really need to get it upside down so I can see and weld better. So, but pretty happy with it. I gotta finish these. I gotta clean those up, and then I was going to put another support bar down the middle. I do have a little clearance issue here with those new headers. Hard to see, but there's like about 1/8 of an inch clear there. So I'll have to modify the firewall a little bit. But overall, body mounts look like they're going to be pretty easy. Nothing too difficult there. So